host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, and Twitter. And welcome back, guys. And I think, Jill, whenever you're ready, if you give me a thumbs up, I'll go ahead and bring you in. All right, guys, my special guest tonight is Dr. Jill Stein. She is running for president for 2024 through the Green Party. Welcome back, Jill.
Great to see you, Sabby.
So, Jill, great things have been happening for your campaign. I actually just saw an announcement from NBC or NBC poll that said that you're now at 5%. And I want you to explain to everyone why that's so important as someone who's running as a third party candidate.
Well, you know, for starters, as a third party candidate, it's always hard to just break out of the political repression and the and the silencing and just being disappeared. And truth to tell, we have not been, we haven't even gotten the token appearance on Democracy Now! Yet, because we're a real threat. We're a party. We're not a one-off. And maybe threaten their donors. Who knows? But, we've not even been allowed to have an announcement here 3 months into the campaign. So, it's very hard to sort of break out of the background noise. And, after the election already started, there's a tendency for things to get locked in. And we entered late just because of the way that the campaign got launched. And so it's been hard to kind of rise above background noise. But finally we were at actually 4%, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and now we're 5%, showing that it's not just a one-off, and that in spite of the media blackout, people are hungry, people are furious, and people are fighting angry. And, we are the one pro-worker, anti-genocide, anti-war, climate emergency campaign that is on track now, not maybe in the future, but right now we are a force to contend with, on the ballot in 20 states, but many of the very big and most difficult states. So we actually have 75% of the work already done. That's thanks to the state parties who've been working all along. So at any rate, it's a big struggle to get seen and heard, but it's happening mainly because people are demanding an alternative to the parties of war on Wall Street, and we need it more than ever.
That's right. And with that 5%, can you explain to people the issue with federal funding? Like, now that you've reached that 5%, and does that federal funding continue going forward through the Green Party in future campaigns?
Yeah, exactly. So we are in the process of qualifying for federal funding right now. And that's through a different system that doesn't depend on your percentage, depends on basically raising small donor contributions all across the nation. We're almost halfway there to getting so-called matching funds. And that means that the federal government, because of that $3 checkoff on your income tax form, they've accumulated a pile of money. The big parties don't use it because there are obligations that come with accepting public funding. You can't you can't be swimming in dough, basically, and you have to observe various rules about campaign finance reform. And they want to spend without limits, so they don't abide by this. But there's a lot of money there to be drawn on, and we are close. In fact, I encourage people go to jillstein2024.com and pitch in whatever you can, because it's those small donations that actually unlock public matching funds. And that just gives us a fighting chance. It's not what it should be. We should have real public funding for elections. And there are other systems, so-called clean elections systems, that provide really a decent guarantee. Actually, they would provide equal funding for all parties. There's a much better system that we are fighting for. We are fighting for this, and we'll continue to. But this is like the little residual token for public funding that's available now. And we're very close to earning that, which basically gives us more ammunition to fight corporate control of government and the parties that are bought and paid for. So, I encourage people to throw in what you can and help us get over that hurdle. But this 5% deal, what happens there is that if you reach at least 5% in November, then what happens is that you have many millions of dollars, on the order of 20 million or so, when the next presidential race starts. So it actually helps ensure that we will really have a competitive, people-powered grassroots alternative that's fighting for, the alternatives to empire and oligarchy. Otherwise, they're just, plowing ahead, business as usual.
I want to talk a little bit about the strategy for your campaign, and if you have any new campaign announcements and the structure, because as I understand, Jason Call is your campaign manager. So let's start with a little bit of the structure of your campaign and then get into strategy moving forward.
Yeah, so we launched rather quickly. We didn't have a lot of prep time. We were basically launching to fill a gap when Dr. West decided to go his own way for very understandable reasons. A good, very amicable parting of ways there, but we had to really scramble. So we launched without the prep that you usually spend months putting together. So we have basically been without a campaign manager for a couple months. And recently, Jason Call stepped up to the plate, which is amazing because, for people who know Jason, he's a wonder to behold. He's kind of a nonstop organizer. He's also running his own campaign for Congress, which is wonderful. Check him out at, Jason Call. It's Jason Call for Congress in Washington State. You can Google him. He's got a terrific campaign, and somehow he manages to do both and hold down a full-time job and be a dad. And he's a really, I wouldn't have believed it, to hear about it, but he's absolutely up to the task. And so we now have a full-powered campaign, and we are going full speed ahead. The most exciting stuff is that we are continuing to chalk up the ballot lines. And most recently, we turned in signatures for South Dakota. And this is the first time that Greens have actually been on the ballot in South Dakota. This is thanks to the Lakota Nation and one activist in particular leading the charge for the Lakota named Sean Littlehorn, who's an amazing person that we've been privileged to work with, including in some of our online rallies where we've been really featuring some of the amazing grassroots leadership in the campaign. So having South Dakota on the ballot is really exciting. We are carrying petitions now in 14 additional states. So we're going full speed ahead. And it's important to note, a lot of independents are talking the game right now, but it's very hard to actually chalk up these ballot lines. The other independent candidates have as many as two states. That's for Dr. West and for RFK, who's raising millions and millions of dollars. He recently just raised his estimate of what it will cost him to get on the ballot to $20 million. And we have 75% of that work done. Because we are a grassroots, people-powered party, we expect to be able to do this for $1 million to complete are additional states, which are the smaller and simpler states, with two exceptions. New York is very difficult, and so is Indiana. So we are, in the process of building those fights right now. It's shameful. It is absolutely shameful that this has to be really the full-time preoccupation of alternative parties. And this is by design. This doesn't happen, by accident. This is how the major parties tried to sabotage their competition. It wasn't always this way. This began in the early 1900s when there was an effort to basically silence the socialist parties during the Red Scare, one of the Red Scares in the early 1900s, and when all these artificial barriers were erected. So this is what we have to go to incredible lengths to to play this game. And it's virtually impossible to do this without actually having gone through it. So we've had many races to build our capacity and to build the culture. This is one of the reasons why I felt really impassioned about filling the gap when we no longer had a presidential candidate. I really felt like we have worked too long and hard to fight the empire. You can be a powerful and profound voice, and it's important for us to have all those voices out there, and there are many of them in this race, principled, people-powered voices. But unless you are actually challenging power, unless you're threatening power, in the words of Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. So, it was a matter of, we got to use it or we're going to lose it. It's a culture. It's the people who know how to watchdog the rules, which are always changing on you. They're different in every state. It's not worth the time of day to even talk about this. It's just infuriating what a incredible rat race it is, just simply to have a voice in this fight. So that's what we're doing. We're well on the way, and we will essentially guarantee that there will be one pro-worker, anti-war, anti-genocide climate action choice on the ballot across the country that can really challenge empire and oligarchy. And we've got to do it.
So, Jill, the other question I was going to ask in reference to ballot access, if I remember correctly, in 2020, the Green Party was not on the ballot in Arizona, but this time you are on the ballot in Arizona. And I think that's really significant, considering when we looked at the race between Biden and Trump. Remember, Biden got a lot of those independent votes in Arizona. So it'll be interesting to see where some of those voters go this time around with Green Party on the ballot in Arizona.
Arizona and really across the country, because people are fighting angry. And the statistics tell us, not only this Gallup poll that shows an all-time high, 63% who want an independent party because the other two have been throwing us under the bus. That's what people are saying now. Basically a supermajority of people now have come into that point of view. But also you have now 20% of African Americans who say they are not voting for either of the major parties. You have 20% of Hispanics, 21% of youth. And we've been running, by the way, national polls show us running at 10% among people 35 and under. And this is all just happening basically word of mouth on social media. People are fighting back and standing up, knowing that basically it's BS that tells you to be good little boys and girls and just roll over on the railroad tracks and, continue to nosedive in this economy for billionaires and, a budget that's being squandered on endless war that is impoverishing and endangering all of us, and a climate that's going down the tubes. We just heard that this was the hottest January on record. And in fact, something like the last 8 months, I think, have all been hottest on record. And we've also just exceeded the, this dangerous threshold of 1.5 degrees warming above pre-industrial baseline. We just now exceeded that for the first time over the past year. We know that the Colorado River is about to dry up. And don't think that's just Colorado. Think fruits and vegetables for the entire nation. This is the agriculture system of California that provides half of the fruits and vegetables for the country. We're within 1 to 2 years. I mean, even the Washington Post ran a headline that the doomsday scenario is playing out for the Colorado River. So we do have a climate emergency, even though it's become fashionable to deny that among many so-called liberal circles. They're going for nuclear power, which is another like total scam, and rejecting the climate emergency. This is just nuts. It badly needs to be debated. I mean, there's just so many reasons why I am so grateful to be running this race and to have a chance to actually debate people. Speaking of which, I should mention two other really exciting things. We've been invited to speak at the libertarian conventions in California and in New York. And, the Libertarian Party is, historically a very decentralized, independent-minded group of people. And they have been very supportive of our campaigns in the past, in 2012 and in 2016. We actually did debates with them in 2012 that were sponsored by Free and Equal. They have another one coming up. But if my memory serves me well, we were voted winner of that debate, largely by libertarians themselves, because they actually listen. They're a fighting culture and they listen to their options. And I'm really excited to be there, to be able to just help drive the debate. We're in this really transitional moment in history. We're at this huge tipping point right now where it's unclear, who's getting out of here alive and whether we're getting out of here alive. And there's just a lot there's a lot of kind of conventional wisdom that really has to be challenged right now. And, so I'm just really excited. We have a historical collaboration with libertarians around fighting for democracy, fighting restrictive ballot access, and a shared opposition to empire, and a shared commitment to protecting our civil liberties, especially freedom of the press. We've been fighting together for Julian Assange and also for freedom of speech, which is under great, there's censorship is just going off the charts right now, especially on college campuses and related to the war in Gaza. So it's really important that this be debated everywhere. And I'm just really excited to be able to have this conversation with the libertarians.
That's awesome. I mean, I agree with libertarians on some issues, like you said, like the anti-war, the censorship and those types of things. So I agree with them on some issues. One of the questions that came my way, and this came from audience members, I got this question a lot over the past couple of days, and I told people that you were coming on. Some people are asking, I'm not sure where this is coming from, but some people are asking, they have this perception that Peter Dow is working with your campaign. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to address that, if that's a yes or a no.
Well, it's actually no, but let me just also say that we have bigger fish to fry. When people have been, how to describe it, attack dogs for the Democratic Party, and then they learn to regret their ways and they apologize profusely, I think this is like a waste of time. Next question.
All right. So I want to move on to this part here about the attack on third parties, because I did see this post from you. There's an article in Politico, and you posted this and it said, Politico reports we're making Genocide Joe nervous. So once again, the party of saving democracy is plotting dirty tricks to kick us off the ballot. And it's this piece here where it says, the latter will, I'm told, include a multi-pronged offensive against Kennedy, Stein, and West, some of which will come from the campaign and some from outside entities. And then this piece here where it says, in the short term, that means seizing on any chance to complicate the ballot access of third-party candidates and attempting to discredit their motives or at least highlight the less savory aspects of their characters. And I want to talk about that for a second, because I mean, you've been through this before. The media and other politicians are going to heavily smear third-party candidates, independent candidates. They've already started doing that. But, as we get closer to November, they're going to pull out all different types of tricks. I think I would say one of the advantages that you have is that you've been through this process before. and particularly you already know the things that they're going to try to say about you. How do you think that's actually going to work this time around? Because, for example, one of the things that the media likes to say about you is that, oh, she had dinner with Vladimir Putin or whatever. I don't know if that's actually going to fare well with people this time around, especially considering the fact more people want to hear the other side. Tucker Carlson just dropped this interview that he had with Vladimir Putin. I checked it on Twitter. It already has over 9 million views. He literally just dropped this. So more Americans are interested in hearing, now that we have this war with Ukraine, what does Vladimir Putin, what does he have to say? Why did he choose to invade in Ukraine? So obviously, if it has over 9 million views, that means people want to hear his side of the story. So do you think this is actually going to work this time around?
I don't think so. And, I think people, Russiagate and the whole set of kind of concocted stories that went with that, only a little piece of that was directed at me, but some of it was. But the whole thing is really proven false, has really lost its steam. I was investigated for 3 years because of these smears and their effort to try to criminalize me, like they're doing now to the Uhuru party that, I don't know the details of their case, but I think, there was some question about some token funding coming their way from Russia. And we were always very careful to abide by the letter of the law. So there was, and dialogue is good. Dialogue is important. And, you have to speak with your adversaries as well as your allies, especially if you think that you have something to bring to global dialogue and leadership. I mean, isn't that a responsibility of our leaders? What, you're just supposed to slam the door? Look at Kennedy and Khrushchev. They averted, nuclear war by sitting down and talking to each other. Well, how about it? We are at that brink right now, and that is all exploding. And it's not just Ukraine. It's also the Israel's genocide in Gaza, which is mobilizing the Middle East. And, in all of its wisdom, what did Congress just do? They turned the so-called immigration bill into just, a military bill and a warmongering bill. And the bill that came through the Senate, as I understand, I'm not sure if it was voted on yet, but, the immigration piece was stripped out, which is good because it was terrible to start with. And you're just sort of left with, I think it's $95 billion in more war funding, and 60 million of that's going to go to Ukraine because they're doing such a good job with that money, just basically slaughtering Ukraine, eliminating an entire generation of Ukraine. And what do they have to show for it? Absolutely nothing. Shame on the US and NATO for having brought this absolute disaster onto Ukraine, knowing full well it really wasn't going to go anywhere, and knowing full well that NATO's expansion, bringing the capacity for a nuclear strike right up to the border, and they have nuclear compatible missiles that are already, they're not in Ukraine yet, but they're elsewhere on the border, and Ukraine just opened up a whole new large border to place nuclear missiles. And Russia's been very clear all along. It just wanted neutrality. That's all it wanted, like Austria after the Second World War. This wasn't rocket science, and the US was sabotaging this. The opportunity to avert war and then to stop the war, within months after its beginning. So shame on the US on Ukraine, shame on the US on Gaza, because this funding that was just passed, so it's mostly for Ukraine, but there's 17 billion for Gaza, as if we don't have something better to do with that money. That 17 billion includes assuring that there will be no congressional oversight. So, how clueless and anti-democratic can our congressional so-called leaders be than to just basically, this is in violation of the Constitution, which holds Congress responsible for declaring war and executing war. And here they are basically saying, we're just going to turn that money over and allow Israel to just stockpile the weapons. Blank check. No holds barred, do whatever you want. If this isn't in flagrant violation of the International Court of Justice, the ICJ's ruling, How do you get more complicit in genocide than by funding it and promising to look the other way? This is absolutely outrageous. And the ICJ should be proceeding, and I hope they do proceed with all due haste to hold all of the leaders accountable who are basically prosecuting this genocide. There are 2 million people whose lives hang in the balance. We are on a death watch in Gaza right now. And people who understand the severity of this are not sleeping at night very well, for very good reason, because 2 million people are actually, their lives are hanging in the balance now in the most outrageous and horrific way. Israel is contemplating another invasion of this little tiny pocket near the Rafah crossing, where people have been systematically driven down. If this isn't an absolute classic case of ethnic cleansing, I don't know what is. Ethnic cleansing and genocide, because they just started at the top and they just kind of bombed everybody down to force them to the exit. And now they're threatening to invade. So, it's a perfect setup for driving people out. And, this is just as bad and evil a policy as you can imagine. Women and children are being systematically tortured and murdered right now. And the U.S. is assisting in every way possible. And this latest bill that just emerged this morning, we should all be just screaming about this right now and resolving to not wait for the election. We're really encouraging people to sign on to our pledge to stop genocide. And our pledge, you can find it on our website. It helps us stand up and be counted right now as people who are saying we are not going to vote for any candidate holding office now or running for office. We will not give our votes to anyone who supports genocide, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing. So it's a way to stand up and be counted, because we know that we have the force of numbers here. We not only have the force of the moral authority, we also have the numbers. It's 68%, according to a Reuters poll, who want a ceasefire, but it's a full 50% now who understand that Israel, with U.S. support, is committing genocide. People recognize this now for what it is. And if we can show that we're translating that into votes right now as we speak, not only can we win the election as the one campaign that will be and is on the ballot right now across the country on our way to full ballot status, we will have that option. And it just helps strengthen our hand now and not wait. Again, in the words of Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without the demand. And we have to bring that demand into this discussion in order to save the lives that are absolutely teetering at the brink right now.
Well said, Jill. Speaking of Gaza, CNN actually interviewed the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan. Actually, MSNBC has too. They've been making the rounds trying to persuade him to convince his constituents to come out and support Joe Biden like they did in 2020. As you know, I'm sure as you know, Dearborn, Michigan has the highest Arab population in the United States. They did heavily come out and support Joe Biden in 2020, but now there is an abandoned Biden campaign that has started among the Muslim community in the United States. And I want to hear from you, because I know recently you were at an event, I believe in Chicago, that was sponsored by the Muslim Coalition. What are some of the things that you've heard from Muslim voters in this country in reference to this Gaza issue and how they plan to vote, if they plan to vote?
They do. And one of the things that we're trying to bring to the table is that abandoning Biden isn't enough. There's nothing that the war parties would like more than for anti-war voices and anti-genocide voices to silence themselves. So it's really important not to play into that trap and to not only abandon Biden, but also to dump Trump. And we say to join Jill in this fight to stop genocide and to understand that we have the strength of our numbers, and all we need now is the strength of our convictions to stand up and make it so. It's really important to seize this moment. It's not only the lives of 2 million Gazans at stake. Arguably, the lives of Israelis are also at stake here, because Israel is making itself a pariah among nations, and it is surrounded by nations who are not friendly and who are becoming extremely unfriendlier the more genocidal that Israel becomes. And you've got the US right now bombing 3 countries as though that's going to help the situation. You had the Houthis, or I should say Ansar Allah, as they prefer to call themselves, standing up to basically abide by what the Convention on Genocide says, which is that it is the obligation of law-abiding nations to interrupt genocide. So what are they doing? They are trying to stop the shipment of war materials to Israel. That is what they're doing. They have miraculously avoided hurting, taking any lives in this process. And the U.S. has seized upon this to basically declare permanent war on Yemen. We have bombed Yemen, I think, 18 times now in the last several weeks. And we are also, we're bombing Iraq and Syria, and we're going after Iran's forces, in the same way that Trump, in all of his wisdom, assassinated, one of their most dearly beloved leaders who basically fought back ISIS years ago. That's sort of what Joe Biden is doing right now. And it's really important to remember that Iran now has a mutual defense treaty with Russia. So this is so dangerous. This is so like World War I-ish, where everybody's connected to everybody else. And Biden, in all of his senility and his cognitive decline and his confusion, what basis does he have for doing this? It's exactly the wrong thing to be doing. He could stop the Ansar Allah's, disruption of commercial traffic through the Red Sea. That would all be shut down in the blink of an eye if we simply stopped the genocide that's going on in Gaza right now, which should be stopped on its own moral terms anyhow. So this is solvable, and the American people are, it's like enough to restore your faith in humanity to see how the American people, especially led by young people and the communities of color and the indigenous communities, they, identify with the people of Gaza for good reason. And this is about not only standing up for the lives of Gazans, for the lives of Palestinians, for the lives of Israelis, ultimately, for the lives of people in the Middle East, but really lives all over the world. Because if this goes nuclear, which it easily could, we're all at stake. And people don't understand, and especially our idiot leaders do not understand, that nuclear weapons are never over there. One nuclear submarine carries enough nuclear weapons, basically the equivalent of 4,000 Hiroshima bombs. That is enough to put us into basically civilization destroying nuclear winter. There is a nuclear sub over there, and I have to add, from what I have learned, we think that nuclear sub is not nuclear armed, which is a good thing. But we have lots of nuclear subs, and they could be anywhere. And most of them are it's not known where they are. And because Israel is a nuclear power, because Russia is tied in here through Iran, it's not hard to see how this could become a nuclear conflict all too easily. So we should do the right thing here and stop this catastrophic war. It's already catastrophic. Let's stop it before it blows back to us. It's already impoverishing us. Let's not have it actually destroy us as well through the full manifestation of the military madness that could be triggered by this war.
There are also reports from African-American voters leaving the Democratic Party Trump has actually gained support from African American voters. And I've talked to this. I also do a call-in show. I've heard from people on call-in saying why they're leaving the Democratic Party and they're moving towards him. And my thing is like, just leave the duopoly altogether. But there's a number of African American voters now in the African American church that are now pushing back and demanding a ceasefire from President Biden. Even pastors are demanding a ceasefire because they said their congregation is asking them, like, why are you telling us to support Joe Biden and he's, funding genocide in Gaza? And so we are seeing a shift, I think, politically in this country that I haven't really seen in my lifetime, where more people are willing to walk away from these parties. I think the number of independents, registered independents, is increasing in the country. What have you heard from African American voters in reference to what they're looking for in a presidential candidate?
I have to say consistently what I've heard from African American voters, once you get beyond the kind of, compromised so-called leadership, the electeds who have the support of the Democratic Party, who are taught to be, cooperative and supportive. Once you're talking to the grassroots, what you hear is that people are hurting. And in fact, if you look at the numbers, actually, racial disparities have gotten worse since the 1960s. In fact, the average income of an African American household is an even smaller percent of what it was back in the 60s. And differences in survival and longevity and access to healthcare and schools. You name it. I mean, what I'm hearing from the African American community is that it's damned if you do and damned if you don't in terms of Democrats and Republicans. It's not really palpable to African Americans that one is better than the other. So like the whole fear mongering around Trump has kind of lost its, has sort of lost its traction among that community. What I've heard some African Americans saying is that they've been even more broke under Biden, with inflation and rising prices. And it's not like that's just happenstance, because Biden either blew up the Nord Stream pipeline and raised energy prices and everything derivative from that, or he gave the thumbs up to it. This didn't happen without his approval. So yeah, I think a lot of this actually does go right back to Biden. It's hard to attribute everything in the economy. But also Biden allowed all the supports around COVID to just go up in flames. And he didn't have to do that. He resumed student debt payments when there was no reason for that to happen. Who is he taking marching orders from? This is someone whose brain is not working very well. So it's hard to know who's whispering in his ear about what he needs to do. But it's just been so harmful to vulnerable communities, whether that's African American or Hispanic or indigenous youth, you name it, across labor. This is going to be the most labor-friendly president ever, but he completely sabotaged the right to strike by, his vote or his actions and the vote of Congress, including the so-called Squad and progressive Democrats, to sabotage the right of the railroad workers union, which in turn then led to the catastrophe at East Palestine, because one of the things the workers were fighting for was adequate staffing, safe staffing, so that, and so that they could get some sleep at night, because now they're on call 24/7, 7 days a week. And, like 50 weeks a year, they do not have protected time, and their staffing has been massively cut. I think they had like a 30% drop in their staffing. So you have like 2 people now that are taking care of a train that can be miles long, carrying extremely dangerous cargo. So it's just a setup for disaster. And this is the rule, not the exception. And what happened in East Palestine, by the way, could happen anywhere. And it's really, and that's a whole story unto itself, how working class America is being thrown under the train here, literally, by the policies of the Democratic Party, including how they treat working people. So, yeah, I mean, I think people are standing up and they're screaming. And we're seeing that now where, I think among Hispanics, support for Trump now actually exceeds support for Biden. And what a commentary that is.
I think some of that could have to do with the border issue, and I wanted to get your take on that. So that bill was voted on today, and it appears that the border piece of that bill they could not reach an agreement on between Republicans and Democrats, right? So obviously there's been a lot of like complaints from people in cities like Chicago, New York, Boston is having this issue as well now too, where Governor Abbott from Texas has actually sent migrants to sanctuary cities, and basically when the migrants come into those sanctuary cities, the cities are actually now putting them into low income Black neighborhoods that don't have the resources to really take care and house them, et cetera. So, for example, in Boston, they actually closed a rec center in Roxbury and they brought migrants in there. So now the people in the community can't use the rec center at all. So the kids that played sports in that rec center, I don't know what they're going to do. So now what is happening is you have basically two oppressed groups that are now angry at each other. And this is really what like the ruling class wants to happen. I feel like they're trying to pit workers against each other. What would you do in reference to the border situation? Because I feel like the immigration issue, nobody has seemed to solve this issue or come up with a solid plan as long as I've been alive.
Absolutely, because to solve this, you really have to address its underlying drivers. So essentially, there are two things that need to happen. One is you have to stop driving people out of their countries. You have to stop destabilizing them and making war on them. It's basically the follow-on to war, to dirty wars, to coups. Look, Guatemala, El Salvador. It's the countries that we have both messed up by basically undermining their democracies in no uncertain terms, overthrowing their democratically elected progressive and socialist governments, which is what we've been doing, ever since the 1950s. There's some like 80 or more regime change operations that have been undertaken. Thank you, CIA and other, U.S. Agencies. So this doesn't even include the wars. These are just like the overthrows, 80 of them. And that's where you have, this, Chile, where we overthrew the democratically elected Salvador Allende and replaced him with an incredibly horrific, repressive, fascist dictator. So you make a mess out of the governance of a country. You make a mess of their economy. You allow corporations, especially U.S. corporations like United Fruit, whom we were benefiting by overthrowing the government of Guatemala. We were allowing United Fruit basically to resist land redistribution in Guatemala. It's by imposing, American empire and oligarchy on these countries that we mess up their economies. Also, through our war on drugs, we basically promote the violence surrounded with the drug trade. If we legalized drugs, like starting with marijuana, you pull the rug out from under the drug cartels. So then you stop the violence that so many people are fleeing. So it's basically military, economic destabilization, drug wars. And then there's climate as well, and we've got to address that because the UN says we will have, like 1 billion climate refugees by the time we get to 2050. And people are fleeing destabilized climate and drought and the collapse of agriculture that's happening regionally and stuff like that. So these are the drivers of migration. People generally don't pack up and abandon their communities unless there's every migrant I have talked to, is distraught about what they had to leave behind. And had we not been really messing things up, we wouldn't be destabilizing the whole world. So, that's number one. We need to clean up our act and act as a team player here among the community of nations and help stabilize rather than destabilize economies and societies around the world and the climate. So that has to happen for many reasons. Each of them has a logic unto themselves, as well as their impact on migration. But the crisis of migration is definitely a product of the crisis of empire and oligarchy, global oligarchy. So that's one thing, what we have to do. We have to shut off the spigot that's driving people here. The second thing we have to do is treat people humanely and in accordance with humanitarian law and the rights of asylum. And that means we have to, instead of building walls that don't work, they just kill people. Walls do not shut people out. They're a disaster for the environment, for the migration of species. There are just many reasons why walls don't work. Instead of spending billions of dollars on walls, we need to provide humanitarian support. We need to massively increase the supply of lawyers and resources to help process people, to ensure that people have adequate housing, not confinement, not for-profit prisons. We need to provide a supportive and dignified helping hand to people who have had to flee to this country as a consequence of the mess that we largely have made in their countries. So let's have a humane and supportive immigration system while we bring down the numbers of people who are being driven here. And we could legalize marijuana, for example, overnight. That could be done, I believe, by executive order on the first day that a Stein administration takes office. We could massively undercut this problem by decriminalizing and legalizing marijuana and encouraging our partners south of the border to do the same.
Well, several states in the U.S. have already decriminalized or legalized marijuana. That's why I said to me, it just doesn't make any sense for them not to just go ahead and legalize it. But the other thing I want to mention, too, in reference to immigration is I feel like the immigration process in this country is too long. People that I've spoken to, I had classmates that went through that process, 10 years for some people. It's just really ridiculous. And this is something that I think a lot of people may not be aware of this. But if you actually go back and you watch video footage of debates between George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan as well, he talked about this. They actually wanted to find a pathway for immigrants to get the legalization faster. So that goes to show you, honestly, how actually both of these parties have changed, how the Republican Party moved away from that, and how the Democratic Party is now just like, whatever. I mean, I don't know what Joe Biden is doing. It doesn't seem like he's really all there. There was actually a report that was released earlier today, I think from the Security Council that they're now admitting that Joe Biden is in poor health and that he's having trouble with his memory. So this is very dangerous at this point in time when he's already got us involved in 3 different conflicts, Jill. We have Gaza, we have the Ukraine war, and we have Yemen, and they're also striking Iraq now. Yeah. And the president is having difficulty with his memory. This is very dangerous.
Extremely. And, I heard that there was going to be a White House press conference tonight, and Biden was going to address the nation on TV. And there was some speculation that, could he be stepping down and basically passing the torch to Kamala Harris, which is hardly like an improvement. Not that he's stepping down from the presidency, but, from seeking the presidency as the leading official candidate. So that is certainly a possibility, and it is also a scary possibility. And I think things don't really change very much. It's a different kind of scary, but it's equally disastrous. And I agree with you. This problem, the immigration problem and the crisis, how long it takes, and the issue of immigrants being shipped north and dumped, whether it's on Martha's Vineyard or in Roxbury or in Florida, wherever, that's awful. That's horrible. And it doesn't have to be that way. Instead of building walls, we can provide the civil society support and the rapid processing so that people are not forever in limbo, and to provide work permits so that people start generating income. Because, Massachusetts just put out a report in my home state here that immigrants basically pay the taxes that benefits economies enormously. Provided they have been processed and have work permits, they are then a part of the tax system. So the problem is the lack of resources to have plugged people in. The problem is not the immigrants. The problem is the lack of a system for processing immigrants. And I think it's just so important not to kind of have these truncated view of the problem. You can't look at immigration outside of what's driving the immigrants here. You can't just say, we're going to separate families and be mean to children, like torture children as a way of discouraging immigrants from coming here, and that was actually a policy in so many words that, that was being promoted. How are we going to stop immigration? By just really, bringing the hammer down on immigrant families. That's just that's outrageous. We can fix this in a humane and holistic way by shutting it off at the source. And let's be the society that we would want if we were forced to migrate. And given what's happening right now with climate, we're going to see a lot of migration. Even like internally in the US and all around the world. So, it's time to step up to the plate and start behaving in a humane and respectful fashion. All the old kind of like biblical guidance about treating the stranger, with respect and with dignity. That's for a reason, the whole golden rule, do unto others, that's for a reason. And what goes around comes around. And, it's just like shocking that we have to go back and persuade people. And the Democrats used to uphold this. They don't anymore. And what this bill made very clear was that it was like the ultimate deal with the devil. In order to get more money to drive these disastrous wars and genocide in Ukraine and in Gaza, in order to have more money for these horrific wars, Biden abandoned all of the old kind of ethical principles around immigration. So all the BS about lesser evil has completely gone out the window. And when you hear that thrown at you, just like it doesn't even deserve the time of day. It's just nonsense. And we have two greater evils, and our focus should be on the greater good. And it's time for us to stand up for that while we still can.
Awesome. Jill Stein, thank you so much. Where can people find you next on the campaign trail?
Oh boy. Okay. We are about to undertake a 14-state tour starting on February 22nd. And you can find out all about it by going to our website, jillstein2024.com. Sign up for our newsletter and, sign up to volunteer and help us fight this fight and reclaim the future we deserve. We're going to be in Michigan. We're going to be in California and Washington State and the Midwest and Ohio and West Virginia and down in the South. And it's a very long and expansive tour. So there's a good chance we can see you on the campaign trail. And otherwise, we'd love to see you on our Zoom gatherings as well. So join the team. It's fun. It's exciting. The need for transformational change has never been more dire, but the possibility to make that change has never been so close at hand. We are on the way to full ballot access right now. for the one pro-worker, anti-war, anti-genocide climate emergency campaign that we urgently need. So join the team and let's make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jill.
Great talking with you, Sabby, as always. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys, that is Dr. Jill Stein giving you updates about her campaign. We have 3 other stories I do want to cover tonight. I was thinking about doing a call in. I'm not sure. I think I told Eric no, but I might do a call in since that Tucker Putin interview actually dropped. So we'll have to stay tuned and see. And I'm just going to fix my camera really quick because it's kind of fuzzy. Okay, let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons, and then we'll go ahead and dive into our other stories, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much for being a Sabby patron. If you're interested, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, and there's also members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much for your support. And I want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. Let's give it up for Joshua and Jacqueline Fuller. Thank you so much. You guys are out here doing the damn thing, doing the thing. All right, guys, let's go ahead and dive into that thumbnail. Then I'll read super chats, and then we'll go ahead and get into the next story. So what else are we discussing tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, tonight we are discussing, of course, Jill Stein was just here talking about her campaign. And for those who missed it, FYI, big update, Jill Stein actually has reached that 5%. So she is going to be able to get that federal funding. So that's a big deal for the Green Party. We're also going to discuss Nancy Pelosi is confronted. Ouch. And the woman in the picture next to her, that is Medea Benjamin from Code Pink. This is epic. And I give Medea Benjamin a huge shout out because she did the damn thing. We're also going to discuss Khanna says no. And you'll see there's Chuck Schumer next to him. That has to do with that bill I was talking about earlier, the foreign aid bill, which is actually, it was mixed in with the border bill as well. So you had the border/foreign aid bill. And we're going to tell you how there seems to be some type of split within the Democratic Party, also in the Republican Party in reference to that bill. And we're also going to discuss, if you have not heard, Nikki Haley and Marianne Williamson upsets. It is not looking good for either one of them. We'll go ahead and dive into those stories. Okay, let's do it. What's going on, Georgia? Jill Stein 2024. Thank you so much for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Georgia a big whoop whoop. Shout out to Robin. Thank you for the super chat. Biden just said he's convinced the president of Mexico to let aid into Gaza. He meant the president of Egypt. It's bad, man. When I tell you guys like this Biden thing, it's bad. Shout out to Yantra for the super stickers. Thank you so much. What's up, Jay? Thank you for the super chat. Congrats on 80K subs, Sabby. Here's to 80K and a lot more. Thank you so much. Yeah. JB actually contacted me this morning and told me I was at the gym and he said, you made it to 80. I was like, thank you. Jason Call says Jill will be debating RFK on February 24th at the California Libertarian Convention. That should be interesting to watch, ladies and gentlemen. So don't miss that. Thank you for the super chat, Snork. Dr. Stein, please don't disrespect Vice President K. Giggles. He's talking about Kamala Harris. And thank you for the super chat, P. Smith. Putin is much shrewder and more articulate than JB. Than Joe Biden, you mean? I think you mean Joe Biden. Okay. Let's go ahead and dive into our first story here. We're going to get into this story about Nikki Haley and Marianne Williamson. So let's start with Nikki Haley. I mean, neither one of them are having a good week. Nevada actually decided to do something a little bit different. They decided to have an actual caucus, and they're also having a primary. They split the days. It's a whole doozy. But in the Nevada caucus, earlier this week, apparently Nikki Haley did lose, which was expected. But what's interesting is that Donald Trump was not on the ballot in Nevada. Remember, they decided to remove him. Remember that? But Nikki Haley lost. So who did she lose to? This is very, 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 very embarrassing. Simon Eteba actually tweeted this. We're going to get into this clip here. A bad night for Nikki Haley. Let's go.
This is an absolute miserable failure by Nikki Haley and her campaign team. And just to make sure people are realizing the gravity of this, so Nikki Haley loses to President Trump by more than 30 points in Iowa, and she declares victory. She loses by double digits with 70% of her votes coming from non-Republicans in New Hampshire, declares victory. And now Nikki Haley has lost to none of the above in Nevada in the statewide primary. Now, important to remind people is
Okay, so 63% voted none of these candidates. So it's one thing for her to lose to Donald Trump. Obviously, I expect Donald Trump to have higher support than Nikki Haley. I told you before, she does not actually have strong support within the Republican Party. This is what I tried to forewarn people about. But how do you lose to none of these candidates? None of these candidates received 63%. 63%.
Addison pointed out before it cut away, is that the caucuses, Nevada caucuses, where 100% of the delegates are being awarded, is tomorrow on Thursday. So make sure you're showing up to vote for President Trump. But here's the thing, Bianca, if you look forward, it gets even worse. Polling shows that Nikki Haley is trailing by massive margins in South Carolina. And now we have polling coming out from the Super Tuesday states on March 5th, where she's losing by 70 in Texas, losing by 70 in California. Nikki Haley needs to drop out, get behind President Trump now. This is an absolute miserable.
So, yeah, it's pretty bad for Nikki. I don't know why she's still trying to stay in this race. She must still have a lot of money to be able to do so. Even MSNBC, they were cracking jokes about this as well. And, you know, a lot of the liberals have actually been the liberal media has actually been somewhat favorable towards Nikki Haley because they just want anyone other than Donald Trump and someone who is a part of the status quo. So listen to this. This is from MSNBC, also picking fun at none of these candidates.
Haley, without Trump's name even on the ballot, still loses to the none option by better than 2-1. So that is a tough reality for her. Trump isn't even on the ballot, and she loses. And it's a closed primary, so it really reinforces what we've been seeing, that when you're just talking about Republican voters, she's really getting clobbered with Republican voters. It's independents and Democrats that keep.
And this is exactly what I told you guys before the primaries even started. What I told you is that if you actually talk to people, you will see that Nikki Haley didn't have strong support among the Republican voters. A lot of her support was coming from registered independents. And also there were Democrats that were voting for Nikki Haley. So people kind of saw Nikki Haley as like, wait a minute, we know what's happening here. This is the Democratic Party trying to push this woman forward, right? We see what you're doing. You're just trying to make it so that Donald Trump doesn't get in. So it didn't work. And I told you guys, even though she had somewhat of a stronger showing in New Hampshire, I still told you guys once we got to the other states, this was going to be very problematic for Nikki because you're going to be able to see that she actually does not have that support among the Republican base. Now, Nikki Haley has responded since she received those poll results from Nevada. Let's dive into this interview here.
My next guest wants to be the person that unites America and preserves its future and for future generations. I want to bring in now 2024 presidential candidate, former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Ambassador, there's a lot to cover on the economy and some other top issues, but of course, I've got to start with Nevada, because listen, all the headlines showing that it was an embarrassment for you. What do you make of that? What happened there, and how does your campaign take that?
Well, I think you can look at any of the stories prior to this. I mean, we always knew Nevada was a scam. Trump had it rigged from the very beginning. There are multiple press stories on that. The GOP chair had been indicted, and they wanted us to pay $55,000 to just participate in their caucus. So we didn't spend a day or a dollar there. We weren't even worried about it. It's why we haven't talked about it. But
here's the thing, guys. Donald Trump doesn't stop voters from vote. He didn't stop the voters from voting for Nikki. That's the thing. If people really want you, Nikki, they will still vote for you.
Focus is on South Carolina, going into Michigan, going into Super Tuesday. Those are the places that we're worried about. We're not focused on Nevada.
All right, let's talk about,
never were.
All right, let's talk about the issues then. Okay, beginning of the year, this is fantastic from AP. Who want the government to, what things that people want the government to work on? And what I love about this is it's a sliding scales. It shows what's moving and what's not moving. Always at the top is the economy. And let's talk about that for a moment, because in September, you put out an economic proposal, right? You call it the Freedom Plan. And it included a lot of things, the elimination of the federal gas tax, the reduction of income taxes, make small business tax relief permanent, and the certain tax deductions like SALT. With all due respect, these are sort of bumper sticker things. And at this stage of the campaign, can you articulate how this puts money in someone's pocket, the average person out there? How do they really benefit from this? Because, again, they've heard it all before, and it's not resonating like maybe it had in the past.
People want to know how they're going to pay for these groceries, Nikki. The grocery store prices are high, and the things that Nikki offered doesn't really do anything.
Well, I think let's look at where we are. Look at where we came from. So everybody says we had a good economy under Trump. But at what cost? He put us $8 trillion in debt in just 4 years.
Pause. Let me say something here. When she says he put us $8 trillion in debt, she's not talking about us. She's talking about the deficit. She's talking about the budget. So again, they're going back to the deficit in the budget. People need to learn MMT, modern monetary theory. There is no such thing. The debt ceiling is a myth. The debt ceiling is a myth. The government can print money like it's always done before. So this is what people have to understand. So when she says he put us, I'm sitting back and I'm like, well, no, he didn't put me in that position. He didn't put me in that position. He didn't put you guys in that position. She's talking about an imaginary ceiling that doesn't even exist. The average American is not thinking about that. The average American is not sitting back at home saying, oh my God, you know, it's a damn shame that deficit is so high. We got to take care of that. No, the average working class American is trying to figure out how they're going to take care of their needs, how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to pay for these high ass grocery store prices. So this is where a lot of times, a lot of these politicians, particularly the ones that are career politicians, they get lost in the sauce, meaning that they say things that may work for their circle, their politician friends. But for the average working class American, they're not thinking about those things.
Biden turned around and doubled down and put us in even more debt. Our kids are never going to forgive them for that.
If the country had to shut down, if the country had to shut down because a pandemic came out of left field, no one knew what it was, but the whole world shut down, would you, as President Haley, put any money into the economy? Would you do any deficit spending, or would you say, no, I won't, because a large chunk of what you're putting on Trump's plate came from an emergency that happens every 100 years or so?
Well,
no, Charles, it was only 25% of that was COVID. And not only that, they didn't even do it well. One out of every $7 was spent fraudulently. Over $500 billion in corporate welfare went out during COVID. I would not have given all that corporate welfare. I actually resigned from the board of Boeing because they wanted a government bailout, and Trump supported it. We don't need corporate welfare. That's what went wrong. They had.
In other words, Nikki Haley would have said, fuck them kids.
No accountability in that. They put out corporate welfare. That's not how you get a country through a crisis. The way you get a country through a crisis is you reduce the size of the federal government. That's why we want to take as many federal programs as we can and move them down to the states. That will reduce the size of the federal government, but it will empower people on the ground. Think healthcare, think welfare, think education, think mental health. If you cut those strings and send it down to the people, that's what really makes things work. When you go into every agency, I'll do what I did as governor, send people into every agency to clean it up, pull down old regs, pull down bureaucracy, get rid of problem children, get rid of programs that don't belong. Government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. And now you've got all of this corporate welfare that we're seeing from both Trump and Biden. It's a problem. Look at the CHIPS Act. I oppose the CHIPS Act because you basically gave, all of this money to companies to build, to manufacture chips, but you didn't stop them manufacturing in China. So it made no sense. It didn't have any sense to it.
Let me
roll
jump in
back
for
all the
1
green
second.
subsidies from the inflation.
The reason why Nikki Haley is not doing well is because she is a George W. Bush style Republican, which is no longer fashionable. Okay. All this gibberish that she was just talking about, again, the average working class person is not wanting to hear this noise. You have to deliver directly to the people, and you cannot do it through all this jargon that a lot of people don't really understand. That's just the reality. So Nikki's basically saying if we were to have another pandemic, she's letting you know you're not going to get any type of stimulus checks from her, basically. Right. So that's what she's telling you. Here's the problem with what Nikki Haley is saying. This country has already decided to send $17 billion to Israel to help them continue a genocide against the Palestinian people. But when it comes to helping the American people, Nikki Haley's statement is part of the problem. People see billions of dollars going out the door. So she's talking about a deficit ceiling, which is a myth. She's talking about the budget of the country, and we see billions going out the door. So the thing is, if you have $17 billion to give to Israel, you have $17 billion to give to people in the need of a pandemic. But she's sitting up here letting you know that if she was president, she would not do it that way. She would push it back on the states. The federal government has more than enough money, ladies and gentlemen. The federal government has a defense budget that's over $800 billion. It has increased throughout the years. Even when we were at war with Iraq, even when we were in war with Afghanistan, the defense budget was never that amount. So you can see what's really happening here, people. This is why she is losing. People do not want, and I'm not Republican or Democrat, I'm a registered independent, but people nowadays do not want any more of these wars. You talk to the average person, they're tired of the money going to the wars. They're tired of money leaving this country, leaving our hands and going to someone else instead of helping the people here. So the reality is you are losing, Nikki Haley, because you cannot relate to the average working class American and their needs. That is why you are losing. And I'll show you this as well. South Carolina coming up right around the corner. 2024 South Carolina Republican primary. Donald Trump has 68% in South Carolina. Nikki Haley has 31%, and it's her state. Now, I told you guys before, I lived in South Carolina. I'm going to tell you again, a lot of people in South Carolina like Donald Trump. Not so much Nikki Haley. Hell, people didn't like her when she won. I just remember all this stuff. We've talked about this before in the show. People didn't really like her when she won. Won for governor, sorry, for those who are not aware. But the thing is this. Nikki Haley is going to lose in South Carolina. She's losing in Texas. Nikki Haley obviously should drop out at this point. So what you need to ask yourself is this, ladies and gentlemen. Why is Nikki Haley still staying in this race? What's the plan for Nikki Haley? Do you think she's staying in this race in the event that Donald Trump is arrested and goes to jail? What kind of deal has been made with Nikki Haley? We all should ask this question. But Nikki did not do well in Nevada. I'm telling you, she's not going to win in South Carolina. I've been calling it. And now we move on to Marianne Williamson. For those who are not aware, Marianne Williamson has decided to suspend her campaign. Let's go ahead and get into her exit speech here. It's titled Much to Be Grateful For.
I read a quote the other day that said that sunsets are proof that endings can be beautiful too. And so today, even though it is time to suspend my campaign for the presidency, I do want to see the beauty, and I want all of you who so incredibly supported me on this journey, as donors, as supporters, as team, and as volunteers, to see the beauty too. There is so much for us to take from this, and that includes knowing that we laid it down in ways that we should all be proud of. We spoke for those who could not speak for themselves in this society. We spoke for those whose lives are falling apart, at least indirectly because of bad public policy. We spoke of those who are struggling because of environmental crises, because of racial crises, because of criminal crises, because of economic crises.
And all that speaking led to nowhere, because here's the thing. We told Marianne earlier on when she announced she was running for president through the Democratic Party that it was a waste of time, money, and resources. And the reason why, and by we, I mean those of us at RBN, the reason why we said that is because we saw what the Democratic Party did to Bernie Sanders 2 election cycles in a row. So the DNC can change the rules, which I warned you they would do. They can change the rules whenever they want to and make it so that the person that they want will be the nominee. So Marianne, instead of doing the dirty break, which at one point she was talking about, possibly considering, instead of doing the dirty break and running as an independent, she decides to leave altogether. So the message that she's telling you about in this video, it all just got lost because the reality is you didn't carry the message on. If you would have dropped out of the Democratic Party and said, like RFK Jr. did, and said, that's it, I'm running as an independent, then you can continue to carry on that message. But now it's just, but she still gets to write a book. I'm pretty sure there's a book coming out.
We did what we could to shed some light in some very darkened times. For that, I will always be so grateful. I take memories in my heart that will last forever. And particularly for those of you who are young, who felt that in this campaign you saw hope. I want you to remember that that which is most important does not end on this day. The story itself is so long, the American story. The arc of history is what matters. And the ideas that we stood for, the ideas that are articulated, ideas you can still go to Marianne2024.com and you can read those issues pages. You can think about running yourself. You can think about being part of the longer story of American history. And no, not every individual effort succeeded for everyone who ever tried to make some progress. But anytime we put out that ripple of hope, anytime we put out any good idea, anytime we shed light in a darkened sky, then that light will remain and the darkness shall be less.
Not necessarily, because I want to use the example again of Bernie Sanders, someone who actually was able to mobilize thousands of people across this country in 2016 and in 2020. The moment Bernie Sanders walked away from his campaign, he left his base and went back to business as usual as a senator. And so you had all of these people that were passionate, and not everyone who voted and supported Bernie Sanders was a progressive, by the way. I don't know if everyone's aware of that. Not everyone who supported Bernie Sanders was a progressive. I met people, particularly out here in Massachusetts, I met people that were independents that came out and supported Bernie Sanders just on the Medicare for all, the healthcare issue alone, right? Some of the people that voted for Trump in the general actually supported Bernie in the primary. These are the kind of things like some people don't really want to talk about. They don't really want to hear it. But the thing is this. The moment Bernie Sanders walked away, there was no more light to remain. It's just gone. There's no leader. There is no progressive movement. I don't care what people are telling you. There isn't. So what happens to the people that Marianne mobilized? See, this is the question I always get back to. When your campaign is over, you suspend your campaign. And I asked Cornel West this question yesterday as well. That video posted to my channel earlier this afternoon. So if you haven't seen that interview, make sure you check that out. Where does all that energy go after the campaign ends? How do you continue the movement when the campaign is over? And what I've seen a lot of times is a lot of these people, they say we're doing this movement, we're doing a political movement across the country, but the moment the campaign is over, the movement doesn't continue because the leader walks away. And the energy has nowhere to go. And when energy has nowhere to go, it dies. This is something that you should be asking everybody who's running for office. Some of you that watch me, you support RFK. You know I do not support the dude, but you should ask him that question too. In the end, when this campaign is over, where does this movement go? Where does the energy go? What happens from here?
So you go forward and you take it from here, and I will be with you in whatever way unfolds for me. This one campaign is over now, but that larger arc of American history, it goes on. And it is my deepest hope that we in some way contributed to that larger story. And if you feel that it did, if you feel that you have a deeper appreciation of the promise of America and of your responsibility to do something about it, to bend that arc in the direction of greater justice, greater hope, greater inspiration, and greater life for the millions and millions of people who live in this country or are affected by our policies around the world, then this campaign will have succeeded. And for that, I thank all of you who helped it succeed. I take your love with.
How does the campaign succeed if you suspend the campaign, though? Like, this doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't succeed. I just don't. I don't understand that at all. Like I said, if you are not carrying on the movement, if you're not carrying on this coalition that you fostered, no, it doesn't succeed. That energy has to go somewhere else.
I take your support with me, and I know that, as with every ending, it's always a new beginning. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. I bless you. We bless this country, and let's also bless this world.
So I'm just thinking about all the money and resources. Like, I'm just thinking about, because all the grassroots, again, what did I tell you guys? What did we say at RBN? All the money and resources that is wasted. That's the thing. And so you got people out there that are grassroots, and they're the ones that are giving the donations. They're giving those small dollar donations. And like I said, at the end of the day, it has nothing to go back to. There's nothing there. People have wasted their money. All of the millions of dollars that went to Marianne Williamson's campaign could have gone to mutual aid. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but we could be building clinics for people. You guys realize this? With all the millions of dollars that is spent towards these campaigns, we could be building clinics for people in communities, particularly rural areas that don't have a hospital or a clinic. We could be housing people, feeding people. That's right, Brennan, the Black Panthers, right? They knew this. They knew this. This is exactly what. So when those of us, a lot of times at RBN, when we tell you guys, like, organize, mobilize within your community and don't donate the money. Notice I never tell you to donate money. I never tell you to donate to a politician, because when I look back and I see Bernie Sanders had over $200 million that was donated to him, and those were mainly small dollar donations, I just want to slap myself, because I'm saying we could have taken that money and we could have actually made significant change for people's lives in this country. But instead, it was spent on the campaign. It is the end for Marianne. And also, we might as well also say it's the end for Nikki, too, even if she doesn't want to accept it. All the money that goes into these campaigns, we could have already built some of the things that we're asking for. Let's go to some of the comments here. Emily says, only caucus gives delegates. Trump won all Nevada delegates today. Thank you for that. Teddy G says her grift will end in South Carolina. Yes, you're right. Thank you, Luis, for the super chat. I may be wrong, but I would bet Haley has lots of DNC money. She is their new straw man. Biden can beat her Biden couldn't beat a rug. Interesting. Shirley Kristen says, will Cornell join Jill on one ticket? Makes more sense. I actually asked him that question in the interview earlier today. So I'd recommend that you watch that so you can hear his response. And thank you for the super chat, David. Marianne Williamson, 2024. Buy my book. Buy my book. Here you go. I told you guys it was a waste of resources. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin hemp card. Can you ask Jill Stein about debating Diane Sayre on nuclear energy? I forgot about that. I can reach out and ask. Thank you, hemp. We're moving on to our next story here, and this is about that crazy bill in the Senate. So there was one bill. We're going to start from the beginning. There was one bill that actually was a border/foreign aid bill. So there was information about what to do with the border. And then there was also a Ukraine package and then a package for Israel as well. As predicted, things did not go in Joe Biden's direction, what he wanted to happen with this bill. The bill did not pass. We're going to get into what happened later on today, but the bill did not pass. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here, but it didn't. I want to say this. The bill didn't pass, but it's not for the reasons that you would think. Let's get into it.
We're going to turn now to politics. As Winston Churchill famously said, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. Well, this week, our elected leaders seem determined to prove that true with enough dysfunction in Washington to rival Thanksgiving at the Logan Roy's. The latest casualty, a $118 billion package in the Senate that paired border security with aid to Ukraine and Israel. It failed to get the 60 votes needed to move forward after Republicans rejected it for not doing enough to secure the border. So now the Senate will try again, focusing only on the foreign aid part of that to Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan. The failure continues a streak of stumbles by congressional Republicans. They failed to pass 2 votes yesterday that should have been, according to Republicans, slam dunks, impeaching Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and giving more aid to Israel. Frustrating? Sure. But maybe this is just the way things are supposed to work in a two-party system, especially when voters install a divided government. House Speaker Mike Johnson addressed that today and tried to assure Americans Congress is capable of doing its job.
You're seeing the messy sausage making, the process of democracy play out. And it's not always clean, it's not always pretty, but the job will be done at the end of the day.
All right, let's go now to News Nation's Joe Khalid.
So let's pause here for a second. So basically, you see what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, some of the Republicans voted against the bill because they didn't want the border piece to pass under the Biden administration. So there's that. And then you also have some of the Democrats who also voted against it because they didn't want the Israel. They tend to be more for the Ukraine package, but they didn't want the Israel package to pass. This is mainly just like partisan politics. So what I want you to understand is that the Republicans that voted against it is not necessarily like they had this moral authority and said, no, I don't want us to give any more money to Israel or to Ukraine. There are few, very few that are against that. It's more so about partisan politics. They didn't want the border piece to pass under the Joe Biden presidency, similar to when Trump was president and there was a Democrat House and they didn't want the border piece to pass under Donald Trump. So here we go again, partisan politics.
Live for us on Capitol Hill, the messy sausage making, that's a nice way to put what we've watched in the last 24 hours.
I was just going to say messy may be a very nice way of describing that, Elizabeth. So right now in the Senate, you talked about the border and asylum portion of that big bipartisan bill. That is effectively dead. But the other piece of that legislation, which was foreign aid money, military assistance to the tune of $60 billion for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel, $2.5 billion for Taiwan, that is very much still alive at this moment. We're in a holding pattern on the Senate floor right now, but I've talked to a number of Democrats. They are going to support this. They've been supportive of it for some time now. Republicans are going to be the ones to watch, but even the Republican senators whom I've spoken with say there is a chance they end up voting for this. It depends.
Listen to this. So this is what was proposed, ladies and gentlemen. I just want you to see the dollar amounts. 60 billion Ukraine aid. $60 billion, as if we haven't already given Ukraine enough. 14 billion for Israel. Now, the piece that was blocked was the 20 billion for the border, 2.4 billion for Red Sea operations, and 2.6 billion for Taiwan in the Indo-Pacific. So for those of you watching, I want to be very clear. Our government, federal government, has plenty of money. A lot of it is going out the door. The same way they can give 60 billion to Ukraine and 14 billion to Israel is the same way they can give that money to you. And they can give everybody health care in this country. And the same way that they can fix these schools, fix these damn roads with all these potholes that they still haven't fixed, the same way that they can fix things and improve things for the lives of everyday working class Americans in this country. So I don't know how many times I have to say this. Our government has plenty of money. They're just not spending it on us.
Depends on what ends up being in a final package. It ends up being what, if any, amendments they are allowed to make to this. So they're all sort of keeping their powder dry, but saying they'd be willing and open to do it. They just have to see what the final product looks like. I want to play for you two different perspectives from people we've talked to. They're actually two different Johns, one Democratic John, one Republican John, just about the failure of the border and asylum piece of this and hope that they can resurrect something moving forward. Take a listen.
It was disgraceful that they didn't voted for the border as well, too. It's like, here's a solution for the things that you've been asking for months, and then now they threw one of their own members under the train.
Even though we've been unsuccessful getting the border provision done now, we can't quit trying, but at the same time, I don't think we can hold up the Ukrainian, Israeli, and the Indo-Pacific aid.
You see that, guys? Pay attention to that. We can't hold up aid when it comes to giving it to another country, but they can hold up aid when it comes to giving it to you. When it's in reference to Ukraine and Israel or any other country that they're trying to give aid to, we can't hold this up. This is urgent. We need to pass this right now. But they make you jump through hoops. Some of you jump through hoops just to get SNAP benefits. Joe Biden cut and reduced SNAP benefits, but they're giving billions to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. So from this point, there was a change because the House actually failed to pass the standalone Israel aid bill as the Senate package stalls. This is important. What they tried to do is they said, well, let us just separate the Israel aid so that we can still give that aid to Israel. So listen to this. Let me remove this part here. By a vote of 250 to 180, the House voted against the legislation that would send $17.6 billion to Israel, with 166 Democrats and 14 Republicans opposing the measure. The bill required the support of 2/3 of the House to pass. House Speaker Mike Johnson called the vote's failure a disappointing rebuke to our closest ally in the Middle East at their time of great need. So it failed in the House. I'm going to show you one of the people that said they warned they were going to vote against it. It goes on to say, he said the GOP made a major concession by putting a clean standalone bill up for a vote to address Democrats' previous concerns. It is clear they are now committed to using Israel aid as leverage to force through other priorities that do not enjoy nearly the same degree of consensus. Leveraging Israel's aid as it fights for survival is wrong. I don't think that Israel is fighting for survival. I think Gaza is fighting for survival. Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. So the Palestinians in Gaza are the ones that are fighting for survival, not the Israelis. So you see how they word these things. So it goes on to say here, passage of the standalone bill would have further complicated efforts in the Senate to rally support for the bipartisan national security package that appears to be on life support. Johnson announced the Israel legislation in a letter to colleagues on Saturday, one day before unveiling the Senate's broader security package. Okay, but there's a lot of fuming going on. Chuck Schumer was upset. He gave a statement. He is actually in disagreement with Ro Khanna, because you're going to hear what Ro Khanna had to say when he told people that he was not going to be supporting this bill. This is really interesting. Everybody plays their part. Everybody plays their part. Let's bring in this clip here from Chuck Schumer. It says Chuck Schumer explodes and attacks Donald Trump for causing chaos in the House. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm not going to be long. So first, Republicans said they would only do Ukraine and Israel humanitarian aid with border. Then they said they wouldn't do it. They would not do it with border. Well, we're going to give them both options. We'll take either one. We just hope they can come to yes on something. The bottom line is very simple. We knew about a week ago when Trump mixed in and said, wanted to be political and said he'd prefer chaos at the border because he thinks it helps him electorally. We knew that we might have to have a second option, so I then called the White House and told my caucus that if, unfortunately, the big supplemental bill failed, we would do everything but border. And that's what the bill, we're posting it right now so everyone can see it. That's what the bill we're doing does. It has everything that we had in the original supplemental negotiations, but without border, although we do have the fentanyl issue, and that's not a border issue, but that is.
So you notice what he did? So he had a plan B just in case they actually did not vote for this bill, which included the border and Israel and Ukraine all as one. So you see how they do you? You see how they can have a plan B? They got a backup plan. When it comes to funding other countries, they're not only pushing forth bills urgently, but they also got backup bills just in case the first one doesn't pass. When do you see them move this way for you? You ever see them move this fast for the American people? No, we're never an urgency for them. Never urgency. And that's all the politicians. When it comes to the military industrial complex, they don't even sit there and second guess it. They move quickly and urgently. When it comes to the welfare of the people in this country, they take their damn time and they drag their feet.
Very, very important. And so we just hope they can come to yes, and we will have the second vote if the first vote fails. I still hope that they would rethink the first vote. Donald Trump wants chaos. Donald Trump does not want success at the border. He wants chaos, and if he became president, I doubt he'd ever solve it, as Mitch McConnell said. And so we want them to pass the border bill, and if they vote against border, America will know who is for fixing the border and who is not. But if it fails, we still believe Ukraine, Israel, humanitarian aid to the Middle East and help in Indochina, as well as strengthening our military, is vitally important. For all those Republicans who said, who first said, we want it with border, and now say we want it without border, they got both options.
Let me pause here for a second. So he's saying this is because of Donald Trump, that the Republicans are basically listening to what Donald Trump wants them to do, even though he's not president. That may be the case. But it could also be the case that, let's be clear here, it is corporations, it is corporate interests, it is corporate greed that wants this to happen. It is foreign policy interventions in other countries and destroying other countries, putting sanctions on a lot of these countries. You can make a direct link when you look at the countries where people are coming from. You can make a direct link to our foreign policy decisions in those countries. So two things can be true at one time. That's the thing. It's not always this side or that side. Sometimes both are true. So it could be true that the Republicans in the House are listening to Donald Trump and doing what he wants them to do, and in the Senate. But it could also be true that the foreign policy decisions that this country has committed in other countries is the reason why we have the migration that we have right now. So when you ask people and they say, where are people coming from? And people mention countries like Venezuela, the U.S. government has done multiple coups in Venezuela. Anya Parampil wrote an entire book about this. This is very clear. You talk about there are people at the border that are coming from Belarus. We got the Ukraine war, which was provoked by NATO and the United States government. People aren't just coming here just because they woke up one day and was like, oh, I think I'm going to make this long, dangerous, life-threatening trek just because I want to check out and see what America's like. They're coming here because they have nowhere else to go because we destroyed their countries. Now, Chuck Schumer, he's going to mention the Donald Trump part, but notice he does not mention the foreign policy part. He can't, because if he did, he wouldn't have that position.
On amendments, because I know you'll ask that. We have always been for a fair and open amendment process. Under my leadership, we've done far more amendments than when McConnell was majority leader, and we will have a fair and open process on amendments, okay?
You're in the same position you were 5 months ago, trying to pass this bill without border. Do you have any assurances that the Speaker would actually bring this bill up in the House?
Look, the bottom line is the majority of Republicans in the House said they want to do Ukraine, they want to do Israel, and we hope that if we pass it in the Senate, that the House would then rise to the occasion. The House is in chaos. It doesn't behoove the Speaker well to block everything because 30 hard right-wing people just want chaos like Donald Trump does.
You see this? I would argue we have chaos right now, too. Listen to the thing. When they talk about the chaos and they say chaos is always under Donald Trump, don't we have chaos under Joe Biden, too? Okay, think about that. Now, Ro Khanna actually sent a warning earlier on. Ro Khanna said, I will vote no on the 17 billion aid package. Listen to this. So it's not like they weren't warned.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will vote no today on the 17 billion aid package, which provides a blank check to Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and the extreme right-wing government in Israel. How dare Ben-Gvir, Israel's national security minister, have the gall to criticize America while calling for the mass expulsion of Palestinians? I will vote no because this bill includes zero humanitarian aid while children are dying and 400,000 Gazans face famine. I will vote no because this bill undermines human rights and international law, ignoring the recent ICJ decision calling on Israel to do more to protect Palestinian civilians. I will vote no because it is painfully obvious to the entire world that what is needed today is a permanent ceasefire and a release of all hostages. There come moments in a nation's history when our actions reveal our values. This is such a moment. We must stand for stopping the bombing, for ending this brutal war, and for justice in the Middle East with a Palestinian state with equal rights living side by side with Israel.
Now, make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, Ro Khanna stood up there and gave that statement, but keep in mind, there was a video I played on this show a while back of his own constituents calling into his, whatever this was, I think it was like a conference call. He had a conference call with his own constituents, and there was a Jewish woman that called in, and she really let him have it, and she told him, you're not calling for a ceasefire. She said, you can sit up here and you can say goodbye to your presidential ambitions. So don't be mistaken. There has been pressure that have come from Ro Khanna's district, from his constituents, that pressured him to call for a ceasefire. That was all caught on videotape, made the rounds on Twitter. And two, if you know that the bill itself is going to pass anyway, it is a lot easier to vote against something when you know that your vote is not going to prevent it from passing. I told you this happens before with the squad. They tend to do this. I guess Ro Khanna's not really part of the squad, but he in cahoots with them sometimes. They tend to do this. It's like they are willing to vote their conscience when they know that their vote is not going to prevent the bill from passing. But when they know that their vote will prevent the bill from passing, they will not do that. You have to pay. I've been paying attention to this for a long time. But make no mistake, Ro Khanna received pressure from his constituents. Now, this is the part here about the plan B, which is what Chuck Schumer was referring to. Senate to vote on Plan B, Ukraine funding without the border security. So I'm just going to read a little bit here, and then I'm going to show you the update that happened later. It says here, Schumer still plans to hold a procedural vote on proceeding to the Ukraine and Israel funding package that includes border security reforms. That way, he can give vulnerable Democratic colleagues a chance to vote for it and argue on the campaign trail that they tried to address the crisis at the border. But the Republicans are expected to block that package, and then Schumer said he will move to Plan B. Schumer has told Senate Dems he is planning to put the negotiated supplemental on the floor without the border security piece after the expected failed cloture vote on Wednesday. So what actually ended up happening? It says Senate advances Ukraine and Israel aid after the GOP blocked the larger border bill. So you see how this is all a game, you guys. It says here, the Senate voted Thursday afternoon to proceed with a stripped down bill that would provide aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan 1 day after Republicans in the chamber rejected a bipartisan border security and foreign aid bill. The vote of 67 to 32 means the Senate can begin consideration of the $95 billion package. Although the next steps are uncertain, it is not yet clear it will have enough votes for the final passage in the chamber. But do you see this? You see all this money going out the door? $95 billion. $95 billion. Notice how when people were running on more progressive issues and they said they wanted to give everybody health care, or they said that they wanted to have free college at public universities, notice the big pushback from the status quo was, how are you going to pay for it? Nobody asked this question when it comes to giving billions of dollars to other countries in order for them to have these wars. And what would be helpful is if we had people in the Senate and in the House that would stand up and push back on them and say, how are you going to pay for it when it comes to these wars? Nobody asked that question. When it comes to death and destruction, bombing countries, committing genocide, nobody asked, how are you going to pay for it? That's $95 billion possibly going out the door, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you can't pay for groceries. Some of you have to ration your medicine. Some of you may have shoes that are falling apart that you have to kind of put tape on to keep it together because you can't afford to buy a pair of new sneakers. But they got $95 billion going out the door. Some of you live in states where the minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. But $95 billion going out the door. They can't give money to you. They can't give you health care. Ladies and gentlemen, wake up. When people push back and say, I don't want my tax dollars to pay for reparations for something that I did not commit to and I was not born for, honey, they got $95 billion. It's not your tax dollars. These are federal dollars going to everybody else but us. And we're going to talk about what's happening in New York City tomorrow night. And you're really going to be pissed when you see what else, other money that's going out that's not going to you. You pay taxes. You paid your dues. And they got money for everybody else but you. Always remember that. I'm ready for part 2 of the Type B and C, Eric. We're going to go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, JoJo. Every year feels like the end, but 2024 really feels like it. Tia says, a friend of mine lost his SNAP benefits without any explanation but aid to Netanyahu and Zelensky. That's exactly that's just another example of what I'm talking about. You cut people's SNAP benefits. Joe Biden kicked people off of Medicaid. He kicked people off of Medicaid. But they got $95 billion to go to Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan. Gamer says we need universal programs like other countries have. I agree. And Rick says they're all a part of the same BS. It's just how they approach things. To good cop and bad cop are both trying to arrest you. Good point, Rick C. Speaking of good cop and bad cop, I'm going to do this other story here with Code Pink. Thank you for the super chat, the tip on Rockfin, Dave. Thank you, Sabs and RBN, for the coverage. You are welcome. Now, we're going to end with a good note, because I thought this was a good story. We're going to give shout out to Medea Benjamin and all the other activists at Code Pink, because they really do put a lot of pressure on the politicians. They're always in their face, not kidding, like always in their face, protesting and pushing back. And they're very revealing, right? So Medea Benjamin, they were also at the Capitol before that $17.6 billion for Israel was being voted on. And they happened to confront Nancy Pelosi. And you got to see this for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Some parts are going to make you laugh, but they confronted Nancy Pelosi. They confronted other senators as well. This is what we need to happen in this country. You have to put the pressure on the politicians. So it says, it looks like many Democrats will be voting no on today's House bill to send $17.6 billion to Israel. So let's start with this clip and then we'll get to Pelosi. It's really interesting.
So what we've learned is that there was a closed-door meeting this morning in which Democrats caucused and decided that they were going to vote against this bill, or they were going to encourage their members to vote against the bill, not because they don't want to send money to Israel, but because they don't want to support this Republican effort. So it's a partisan issue.
You see what I was saying, guys? That's what I was trying to tell you. It's a partisan issue.
I think one of the reasons is the intense pressure they're getting from the grassroots. You know, everywhere these Congress people go, they're being interrupted in their town halls, their offices, their sit-ins in it. We have been in the halls of Congress every single day. They've got to be feeling that pressure. It buys us some more time to keep the pressure on so that when it comes up again, which it will, we will get more and more people voting against money for Israel because they have heard from us. So what we've
That's right. Okay. So there was that piece there, and we are going to get to the Nancy Pelosi piece. So as you can imagine, one of the people that they did confront is Nancy Pelosi, Miss Refrigerator Ice Cream herself. She has a whole fridge of ice cream that she was showing off. Remember, this woman is rich. Don't feel sorry for her at all. I don't feel sorry for rich people. I don't know about you guys, but I don't. Okay. So Nancy Pelosi here is being confronted by Medea Benjamin. Oh my God, this is epic. If you do not remember, Nancy Pelosi actually accused Medea Benjamin of being like Russian apologists. She accused Code Pink of being Russian apologists and Chinese apologists. And my thing is, Nancy, if you're going to talk about people, you know, you're going to call them names, then you should be woman enough to stand in front of their face and tell them why you called them what you called them. Is Nancy woman enough to do that? Let's see.
Don't call us Russian apologists or Chinese apologists. You are an Israel apologist. You are an Israel apologist. Voting yes or no? Are you going to vote no on the money? Are you going to vote no on the money to Israel?
Profile. We
Are
saw
you
that you
no?
spent $1 million
Are you going to vote no on the money?
Congratulations on making money on it.
We're not. Russia's sponsored.
So I don't know if you guys see what they're doing, but they're calling out how much money she's getting. They said 1 million in stock sales. Congratulations on making money off of genocide.
Congratulations on making money on it.
We're not. Russia's sponsored.
We're not from China.
We don't have headquarters in China. Our headquarters is right here in the United States, and we don't want you giving any more money to Israel.
Our bridges are crumbling. We have
San Francisco has so many problems. We need the money at home.
And there's nothing wrong with what Medea Benjamin is saying. She's correct. She said, we need money to fix our bridges. San Francisco has so many problems. San Francisco has one of the largest homeless populations in the country. That's Nancy Pelosi's district. But Nancy don't care about those kids. Nancy too was like, fuck them kids. Meanwhile, she has a refrigerator full of ice cream that she can just shows off. She doesn't care. She doesn't care. Remember, she comes from a political family. Nancy Pelosi was friends with the Kennedys. I don't know if everybody knows this. Nancy Pelosi's father was the mayor of Baltimore. Okay? He was friends with the Kennedys. Nancy Pelosi met the Kennedys when she was a teenager. All these people, when I tell you all these people run together, all these people run together. So she was just another pawn.
Congresswoman, we need the money at home. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Money from people.
Don't call us Russian apologists or Chinese apologists. You are an Israel apologist. You are an Israel apologist. You're an Israel apologist.
Did you see how she shooed them away? You know, this is the rich people stuff. Look, this is the elitist attitude. Watch her. Look at that. She's shooing her away as if Medea is beneath her. That's what she's doing.
You're an Israel apologist. Stop supporting genocide. Shame on you.
$1 billion in Nvidia stocks this week. She's making money off the
Yeah. And they're right to call out the money. They're right to call out her stock trading. That also needs to go away. But I want you to see something, because Medea actually put this in slow motion, and there's something you need to look at. Medea says, wow, was Nancy Pelosi going to hit me for accusing her of being an Israel apologist? So she slows this down. Pay close attention to this.
You are an Israel apologist. You are an Israel apologist.
right here.
Look at her fist. Look at her fist. That's why I was like, was she gonna, like, what was happening here? She pulls her fist up. What was she gonna do?
You're an Israel apologist. Stop supporting genocide. You are an
Yeah, so it looks like before she did the shoo away, she actually balled up her fist. Was Nancy about to start throwing blows? Like, I don't know. Very weird. But there was more. So they also approach other senators as well. This is really interesting, guys. Medea says, this is what millions from AIPAC buys in the Senate. So they put a price tag on everyone that they cross. This is really interesting in case you're wondering who the pro-Israel senators are. Watch this. John Fetterman, $244,000 from the Israeli lobby. I told you guys John Fetterman wasn't shit. When he was running for office and there were some pundits that were telling you he's the progressive choice, I showed you what he said about the state of Israel. I showed you back then, and I told you that John Fetterman was not progressive. He even told people in interviews he wasn't progressive. He was endorsed by Hillary Clinton, which should have been the biggest fucking flag. And so many of these pundits, so many progressive pundits were like, yeah, well, you got to support John Fetterman, and he's the progressive choice. Motherfucker, did you do any research? Did you see who endorsed this guy? You think Hillary Clinton would endorse someone who's actually progressive? This is what we get.
Betrayed by you. Absolute betrayal. Ceasefire now, you coward, traitor.
Ukrainians are dying in this fight every day. What about the folks dying in Gaza? Do you have anything to say about that? I'm hoping.
See how he moves away? Senator Coons, over $258,000 pro-Israel lobby. I love that they did this.
That is a key piece of this, absolutely. For which I am also fighting.
Israel.
The war does not make Jews safer.
So why are you not troubled with Hamas terrorists?
Senator Cruz, over 1.2 million from the Israel lobby, right? You see this? That talking point, they all have the same talking point. Why don't you have a problem with Hamas? These people are bought and paid for. They're supposed to serve us, but they don't. And because we don't really push back on them, they don't feel any pressure to do the right thing. That's the thing. If people keep voting for these clowns, they're never going to change. I don't understand why people keep voting for these clowns. I really don't.
I am, but
Wait,
the
you
war
sure don't
doesn't
sound
make-
like it. Killing Hamas makes Israel safer.
Killing 30,000 civilians doesn't make anyone safe. Killing 30,000 civilians, 10,000 children. I beg you, Senator Romney. I have a little baby, 18 months old.
Even Senator Romney, oh no, not Mr. Mormon. Not the Mormon. Oh no. Over $975,000 from the Israel lobby. Meant to.
Who's dying right now in Gaza? Senator, please, I have a baby dying in Gaza. Please vote no.
Senator Rubio, who basically looks like Slater and Zach from Saved by the Bell had a baby. That's what he looks like. Over 1 million from the Israel lobby. Now you know why they vote the way that they do.
Yeah, Hamas is responsible for killing all those
But
children.
the civilians aren't.
I know,
I
but
have civilians are not.
Hamas kills children. Hamas is an evil organization. I hope Israel.
You see how they're still spreading these lies, saying that they kill the children. They're an evil organization. All these people are pawns and puppets.
Destroys Hamas. That's what I hope, and I want to help Israel destroy Hamas.
Civilians. But what about the children? Blood is on your hands. Millions of
Senator Kennedy, over 189,000.
Do you vote no for more money to Israel? Yours has one of the highest poverty states in the whole.
Senator Wicker, over $600,000.
I'm going to vote yes.
You're going to vote yes. What do you have a little girl who's dying right now?
Senator, just like you're keeping the money for Ukraine here at home where it's needed, we all agree with you.
Hawley, over $81,000.
Why do you not do the same for Israel? It's $18 billion that will go
we
to
need
Israel.
that money in America.
We need the American
we need that money for
here.
education, for social security.
Because I'm not an anti-Semite. I believe in the right of Israel to defend itself.
But we
and
need
I believe.
He said he's not an anti-Semite. They posted the article here. Missouri GOP senator trouts out anti-Semitic trope during speech before a national conservative group. So it sounds like AIPAC got a hold of him after that happened, and he had to change his tune.
And the right of the Jewish people to be safe.
And how about the people of Missouri needing that money, Senator? Senator Holly, people of Missouri needs that
I
money.
wish I had an Israel flag to wave.
I know, but they
What's up? Israel has the right to defend itself.
Can I say something?
Like, they're not even original anymore, guys. Have you noticed the talking points aren't even original? They all say the same thing. Israel has a right to defend itself. Why don't you care about Hamas? They have nothing else to say, especially when you call them out with their funding.
Why does Israel defend itself by killing babies? Can I talk? 1 second. Can I tell you something? You're an actual war criminal. Have you seen the war crimes that the Israeli soldiers laugh about?
No more money for war. I 100% agree. So we got a problem with our politicians. Now check out this senator, because they got him too. Medea was actually, they were on the, man, they were hitting the rounds. Look at this. Watch this.
Are you gonna call for a ceasefire?
Look how fast he turns around. This is too funny.
Are you gonna call for a ceasefire?
What about the Hey, what about the deficit? I thought you cared about that.
Stop spending our tax money on a genocide.
You see? These people, like, they're not really actually talking to their constituents. They're avoiding them, especially the ones who have been there for a long time, which is another reason why I think we need to have term limits. Now, I want you to hear this one here, this is the one that's going to make you laugh. So they're talking about the money, how the senators want to take money. They get all this money from the Israeli lobby, right? So I guess they figured maybe we should give them money. Check this out. This is too funny.
Well, we see them. They're all in a meeting right there. And so we've been knocking on the door and we've been putting some dirty money.
No, I'm sorry, but it's funny because, like, you know, when I see Medea and them do this stuff and I'm just like, man, they are really for it. It's funny.
Well, we see them. They're all in a meeting right there. And so we've been knocking on the door and we've been putting some dirty money under the door because, you know, we are passionate. We care about these issues. People are dying and they're sitting there like business as usual. And we're demanding they come out and explain to us what they are doing and why is it they're insisting on sending $14 billion of our money to support this genocide. They have to come out and face the voters.
Give you some money.
5 minutes.
Knock, knock.
We need you to open the
Who's
door.
there? Genocide. Genocide who? Genocide is bad.
Come talk to us. Come talk to us.
I just can't. You gotta give them, you know, credit. You gotta give them a shout out because my thing is like you guys are diligent about it. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if you guys heard, Hamas actually has proposed a ceasefire. However, Netanyahu rejected it. This is new. This is new. They have proposed a ceasefire and Netanyahu rejected it. Now, Antony Blinken, who I think is a snake in the grass, motherfucker. I think he's a snake in the grass. And I think he's a liar. And I think this guy knows. This guy always looks scared. Like every time you see his face, he looks like he's being threatened or held hostage somewhere, right? So it says here nearly 2 million people have been displaced from their homes in Gaza. Let's hear what Blinken has to say about maximizing civilian protection and humanitarian aid.
We also discussed the imperative of maximizing civilian protection and humanitarian aid to address the ongoing suffering of Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Nearly 2 million people have been displaced from their homes. Hundreds of thousands are experiencing acute hunger. Most have lost someone that they love. And day after day, more people are killed. On all of my previous visits here, and pretty much every day in between, we have pressed Israel in concrete ways to strengthen civilian protection, to get more assistance to those who need it. And over the past 4 months, Israel has taken important steps to do just that, starting the flow of aid, doubling it during the first pause for hostage releases, opening the north and south corridors in Gaza so that people could move out of immediate harm's way through these corridors with 4 hours pause every day, 3 hours notice.
Now he's just going to sit up here and pretend like Israel is not blocking the aid from getting to the people, right? Look at his face. Look at Antony Blinken's face. Antony Blinken looks like he is either being held hostage somewhere or he looks like he knows something that he's not supposed to know. That's what he looks like. That's what it, you know, there's no redemption for this man. There is no redemption from this man. When you get a moment, when you watch the interview with Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin, one of the things that is alluded to is that people like him actually have more power than the president of the United States, but he does not use it because, again, he is also being controlled. He is a puppet.
And yet, as I said to the Prime Minister and to other Israeli officials today, the daily toll that its military operations continue to take on innocent civilians remains too high.
But let's talk about something for a second, folks. How are you going to sit up here and play the American people like that? How are you going to play the American people and you're talking about giving the Palestinians in Gaza humanitarian aid, but at the same time, you're giving Israel weapons to kill them? You know, It's just like, I give you a sandwich. I say, hey, you're hungry. Here's this sandwich for you. And then I shoot you while I'm giving you the sandwich. That's essentially what's happening here. And don't you guys think it is some bullshit that the US government can continue to sit up here and give Israel weapons after the ruling from the ICJ? So no, I don't blame South Africa for now trying to be able to take the US and the UK to the ICJ as well. They are just seriously just overlooking what the ICJ said and doing what they want to do. Now, you'll see here, Netanyahu rejects the ceasefire proposal. This happened the other day.
We begin with breaking news this morning. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected Hamas's proposed ceasefire terms, saying total victory in Gaza is possible within months. Hamas had proposed a three-stage plan. The militant group was seeking freedom of movement in Gaza, increased humanitarian aid, and all RDF troops to withdraw from fighting within the enclave. But it was rejected. Here was Benjamin Netanyahu a short time ago.
We are on our way to that decisive victory. It is in our hands. It's not a matter of perhaps weeks, but it is in a matter of months. The IDF are working systematically, and they will achieve all the objectives of the war. They're going to release all the hostages, eliminate Hamas, and Gaza will no longer be a threat to Israel. I have decided that that is our objective. That is the decision I made at the beginning of this war, and we will not suffice with less.
So basically what Netanyahu is telling you, besides the fact that he rejects the ceasefire, is that he's telling you that they are going to continue to kill civilians. They have not eliminated Hamas. They have killed over 26,000 people in Gaza, and they still have not eliminated even half of Hamas. What he's saying to you is that they're going to try to kill all the people to make sure that they kill Hamas. That's really what they're trying to do. It's a hot mess. And you know what's interesting? Even Piers Morgan isn't buying it now. I kid you not. You know, he has been a strong supporter of the state of Israel. Listen to what Piers Morgan, we're not going to play the whole thing, but listen to what Piers Morgan says here, because even he's not buying it now. Now he's starting to question it.
I think Israel had a right to defend itself, a duty to defend itself. But we now have, as we've heard, I think it's 12,000 children believed to have been killed. Another 20,000 or so have been orphaned. 2/3 of Gaza has been flattened. And here Benjamin Netanyahu says after 4 months, well, we're nowhere near finished. There's months more of this. We will continue until the last Hamas terrorist is gone. Okay, but that may mean the entire Gaza Strip is gone, destroyed.
And that's what that means, people. I want you guys to understand what Netanyahu is actually saying between the lines there. That's exactly what that means.
Flattened. It may mean, well, hang on. It may mean the number of children killed doubles to 20,000, maybe 30,000. At what point does this become, even to people who support Israel implacably about this, does it become just utterly disproportionate?
Well, I think proportionality isn't the actual question here. There's a very easy way to end this war, and that is to return all of the hostages and to surrender unconditionally. That is.
You see this? She said the proportion isn't the issue. You see what I mean? So they're telling you without saying the words, they're telling you that they're going to kill all of them. That's what they're telling you.
That is what Hamas should be doing. That is where the
but
focus
that wouldn't
and the
end the
pressure
war,
of the
would it?
international community.
Hang on, but Emily, that
of
would
course
not.
It would.
That
those
would
are
no.
Israel's,
Benjamin
those are Israel's
Netanyahu.
true demands.
No, hang on. Benjamin Netanyahu has stated unequivocally this goes on until Hamas are finished, all of them. That means another. That means another 20,000 people have to be killed, right? Who are just the terrorists.
No.
So he's not going to stop if the hostages got released tomorrow.
But that's not true. I said
Netanyahu,
the unconditional.
Emily, let me finish.
Notice how hostile she's being. I told you the Zionist playbook. This is what they do when you start to show and prove that they are lying. They start to interrupt. They become hostile because they don't like to be proven to be liars. You've seen this in a lot of these interviews, them doing this. The moment you catch their ass, all of a sudden it's, oh, wait a minute, let me overtalk you because they're going to realize, the gig is going to be
finished. All of them. That means
Exactly.
That means another 20,000 people have to be killed, right? Who are just the terrorists.
No.
So he's not going to stop if the hostages got released tomorrow.
But that's not true. I said
Netanyahu,
the unconditional,
Emily, let me finish.
Let me finish my question. Of Hamas.
I don't think Prime Minister Netanyahu has any intention, even if the hostages get returned tomorrow, of letting 20,000 Hamas terrorists remain in power in Gaza. He's going to continue.
But I already said that. I said the release of hostages and the unconditional surrender of Hamas. Hamas cannot remain in power in the Gaza Strip and have Israel restore a sense of security. Those two things cannot coexist.
First of all, let's talk about the fact that Hamas didn't always exist. Hamas exists because you occupied the people. That's why Hamas exists. They didn't exist in 1948 when the Nakba happened. The Palestinians were just chilling, being cool. When you displace these people from their homes, when you force them out, and you want to talk about brutal attacks, let's go back to the Nakba and talk about the brutal attacks that the Israelis have done to the Palestinian people, that they continue to do to the Palestinian people when they go into Gaza and they choose to mow the lawn, how they treated the children, how they have imprisoned children and they've abused children in the prisons. The reason why Hamas went after the hostages in the first damn place is because it was supposed to be an exchange, because they want the Palestinian hostages that are in the prison in Israel to be returned back to the damn people. No court, no trial. They just gathered people and just threw them in a prison. People have to understand this. This shit is not legal. Israel is out of control. They're doing whatever they want to do. And this is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. If they're doing this to the Palestinian people, they can do this to anybody, anyone, whether it's Jordan, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Syria. How far does this go, people? How far does this spread? This is borderline Hitler level nonsense. That's where this is going. Do you guys think, if you think back to the Holocaust, do you think Hitler just woke up and said, I'm just going to try to take over, take these people here and bring them there? No, it's spread. And that's the plan.
That is why Netanyahu said we will not accept any term in which Hamas stays in power, because they will do the same thing again. And the longer this goes on, the longer they stay in power, the more funding. I think the most recent document said 150 million went through Sinwar in the documents that the IDF found on the ground. The more money that Iran is funding,
Emily, you cannot just
the stronger Hamas is.
You cannot just kill everybody in Gaza. You can't.
Israel is not intending to kill everyone in Gaza.
If they carry on for many more months,
we are risking.
They carry on for many more months. How many people are going to get killed?
So you guys see what's happening here? You see what's happening? Now, even some of Israel's great defenders, and Piers Morgan was one of them. We've covered him before on the show. Now, even he is starting to question what Israel is doing. We don't have a war with this type of casualty. Historians will tell you we don't have this. We don't have it. I think I am going to do a little call in if you guys are up for that. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back. We'll hop over to call in and do the damn thing.
All right. Just a little call in. Yeah, we've heard that before. All right. Yes. I think Sabrina decided that you all would have something you'd want to talk about the things. So yeah, we're doing Colin tonight. I think this is where we give Sabrina a break before we jump over onto the Colin platform, which you can do on your computer or on your smartphone. And yeah, Colin is where we can hear from you. She's going to be setting up the room, and then she'll be and then she'll post the link. You can get in that way, or you can do it on the app. And hello to everyone out there. Hello, Anna and Rick and all the regulars. Let's see. We had a few chats go by. Let's see what's out here in the old chat queue. Thanks for the super chat. 81 million. Most people don't know about Trump and Venezuela. Yeah, I mean, there's this thing of some Trump supporters will put it out there and say that he's anti-war, and you know, it's just not true. It's really, you know, if we'd probably still have this same situation in Palestine and Gaza if Trump were in office, because the same forces are in play, the same billionaires are in charge, and the money, and you know, this idea that there's a difference, a real difference between Biden and Trump just isn't factual. It's just not true. They both serve the same billionaires. They both serve the same interests. You know, and like Quincy here said, follow the money, right? It always follow the money. And Saul, I know, was saying, yeah, Israel was given a green light by the U.S. to kill every Palestinian. And yeah, it's, you know, what's happening in Gaza, it seems pretty clear, is that they're trying to clear the land out. It's a resource grab. All wars are resource wars, as always, and they're trying to basically clear the place out so that then they can have more room for settlements and get at the resources. And you know, land is a resource, and so if I think part of the Israeli strategy and the Zionist strategy is first to take advantage of October 7th and as an excuse for all the killing and everything that they're doing, and to come out of it with the land, with the resources. And if they make things bad enough in Gaza, then that will force other countries to take in the Palestinians and force them into Egypt and Jordan and the other countries. And I think that's really just kind of part of the strategy. All right. Yeah, we had this, and by the way, yeah, in call-in, you can talk about the stories that we covered today. Like we had Jill Stein and Pelosi, Khanna and Schumer, and we had Nikki Haley and Marianne. Or you can talk about anything you want in call-in. Early, we had also the part with Code Pink, you know, and definite respect, you know, to what Medea and Code Pink are doing in there. And I really liked the part where they were hitting on the money, right? They had this list of what each one's getting, you know, directly from AIPAC, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. All this money works, and slipping the money under the door as kind of, can we talk to you now? You know, here's this money. All right. Thanks for the super chat. Did you see Putin and Tucker? I mean, we haven't had, I haven't had time to look at it. I think Sabrina's looked at a little bit of it. But yeah, that'll be interesting. We'll see how much coverage of it is allowed on YouTube. Sabrina's been wondering if a YouTube channel talks about it too much, if YouTube's going to come after them. But yeah, you've got you've got money running everything. AIPAC is really just playing the game like the rest of the huge big money interests. And yeah, they're a big one, but I mean, there are lots of big lobbies, and it's really just about the interests of this top 0.1% versus the interests of the rest of us. And that's really what you're seeing in Congress more than anything. And I think it's really incumbent on us here on the real left to really realize what's going on, that is what's going on, and demand an end to it. And I feel like that's a lot of times is the missing piece of really calling out the money and the corruption and saying, you know, we need to demand an end to it. And so we had Dr. West and Dr. Stein both on the channel today. And there's talk of, can they come together and whatnot? And, you know, we'll see. It would be good if there was some way. One thing that I would propose would be to have a greater movement that's based on demanding an end to the corruption and money running everything, and our so-called representatives, you know, not representing us, and have that be an umbrella movement, and have both campaigns be a part of that movement, regardless of whether they're in green or independent or which one it is, but always come back to that movement, always come back to that point of saying, the corruption's got to go, the big money's got to go, and we need a government that represents the 99%. And maybe that's a way that they can come together. And I think if we could do that, and I think we'd have to get in the streets, I think to really get anything done, we're going to have millions of people in the streets demanding an end to this, demanding an end to the corruption and the big money politics. And it would be pretty incredible if we had that kind of movement where they were both campaigns and both candidates were a part of it, and we would all be a part of it. But we're going to have that kind of focus on what exactly are our demands and what are our proposed solutions, and what does that look like. And so, I think that's something that we're kind of working on in this corner of the left, of trying to make that happen. And in general, from both campaigns, to me, what I hear is they talk about money and the donors sometimes, but it's not. It doesn't seem to me to be the focus, and that's what I'm really waiting to see from both of these campaigns. Is can they focus on money and corruption, and just call out every member of Congress, every member of the administration as simply paid representatives of the billionaires. And I think if both of these campaigns, and in general, if the left, the real left here, doesn't do that, then I think we're going to keep kind of flailing along and whatnot. But I think if they do that and can really do that kind of focus, they can. Oh yeah, somebody's asking about Kiva. 1 second. If they can really do that, then the sky's the limit. If we can focus and hone in on that money and corruption. All right, here I got to serve our audience here. They want Kiva, and you're in luck because Kiva just happened to get in her spot. So this is Kiva. Let's get her on here. All right. So it's Kiva. All right, see if we can get her. Kiva. Come on, wake up, you lazy. Get a good shot. Right, there you are. Come on.
Oh,
how much wire we got here? Here we go.
You're a hit, Kiva.
Kiva. Yes, you're good. Yes. You can always get the audience by having a cat. All right, go back to sleep. All right, Kiva's had her cameo.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you what we're gonna talk about. I'm telling you right now, guys. We'll talk about this tomorrow.
About Kiva? Oh,
no. Tomorrow we're gonna talk about them trying to install Kamala Harris, because I just saw the tweet, and I'm gonna let you guys know we're gonna touch on this tomorrow night, because here it comes. Here it comes. I told you. And if you think it's close between Trump and Biden, wait till you see what it's going to be like when they put Kamala in.
Now, we had this thing today where Biden was doing this announcement, and we were wondering if it was going to be something like real, like he was going to drop or something. But it just turned out to be this dumb response to the special counsel, and it was a big nothing. But we were wondering if it was going to be something big. We'd have to jump on it.
Well, they are. I'm telling you, he posted. We'll get into it tomorrow. I'll get into it tomorrow. But I'm telling you, they already hinting in that direction because of his health report that came out. So it's about to be a mess, guys. It's about to be an absolute mess. But we're going to go on to call in, guys. We'll do a quick call in, and we do have to end at a certain time tonight. This is episode 152. We can talk about the Tucker Putin interview. I saw part of that. I know some of you have already seen the whole thing. We can talk about Pelosi and Code Pink, Jill Stein, etc. We can head on over there. So that link is pinned to the top of the chat. But get ready, folks. Get ready. I'm telling you, they trying to put in Kamala. Get ready. All right, guys, let's head on over to call in. That link is pinned to the top of the chat. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.